Hi everybody, welcome to my talk today, which is part of a series focusing on nursing careers. And today I'm focusing on research roles and how to become a nurse researcher. And I have a video out on nurse educator roles on my YouTube channel, Support and Career Development for Nurses, for any of you that are interested. And also be putting out future videos on specialist nurse, advanced nurse practitioner careers and roles, and clinical management leadership careers and roles in the future. And all my videos are free to subscribe on my YouTube channel, so hit the subscribe button. I hope you enjoyed the talk today. So I'm often asked by near to registering students and early career nurses, what does a research nurse do and how do I become a research nurse or a nurse researcher? And during my 34 years in nursing, I have worked with a range of research nurses and I've been research active myself. I started a PhD at 52 years, so it's never too late. So I'm going to really try and share tips that I've learnt over the years and to help you access any opportunities that are out there for funding for research as well. So I hope you find the talk helpful. So, firstly, looking at some example roles, when I scoped what roles were out there recently, you'll see that there's a lot of different titles and there is different ranges of nursing, of pay scales and nursing bands. So some examples: clinical research nurse, specialist research nurse, research practitioner, clinical trials nurse. And then you've got more senior level research type posts like senior research nurse or lead research nurse, etc., etc. And so the second bullet really links to more of the leadership roles, and some of these roles may be NHS research posts, or they might be university posts or joint appointments where they're half funded by an employer and a university, or they may link to private companies or charities. And when you drill down on job descriptions and personal specifications, you'll see a range of responsibilities depending on the research, the type of research that's being conducted. And it could range from drug trials, it could be monitoring interventions, quality of life assessments. You may be supporting an existing research project or setting up a new research project. So go and have a look at those job descriptions and personal specifications. The sort of responsibilities that more junior research roles may include: collecting research data, documenting, monitoring research subjects, and responding to adverse effects. And you're working with a multidisciplinary team or research team. You might manage a caseload. You may become involved with informed consent and adhering to the study protocols, whereas senior research roles are responsible for the management and delivery of research studies in partnership with key stakeholders and sponsors, and they have to ensure that research and development management approval is in place if they're the lead, and they have to assure high standards relating to ethics and safeguarding, and that serious incidents are reported to national regulatory bodies. There is good practice guidelines that have to be adhered to. There are EU clinical trial directives and research governance and ethical frameworks that have to be assured and adhered to. So the leads for research and will be looking at leading a research team and cross-organisational work. The good practice guideline certificate that many researchers will complete before they start a research project is an international ethical, scientific and practical standards which all clinical research has to adhere to. And when I started my PhD, it's one of the things, because I'm looking at clinical research, I had to complete this certificate, the Good Practice Guidance Certificate, online. So that gives you a bit of an idea of some of the roles out there and responsibilities. When you're looking at example roles and responsibilities. We also have clinical academic appointments, which are usually joint appointments, and it might be between an NHS employer and a university, for example. And we also have joint appointments that might be set up as clinical nurse specialist nurse roles, and they also have a clinical nurse researcher role. So it just, again, you'll see this real vast variety and range of posts. And you may want to become an independent nurse researcher. So whilst working full-time or part-time in a clinical role, like I do, you self-fund to do your master's or a doctorate, or you apply for funding opportunities, and I'll talk through some of those funding opportunities. So you'll see many nurses applying to do independent research as part of their masters, depending what career pathway they're aligning to. And funding opportunities may involve research grants, bursaries, internships, studentships, fellowships or lectureships. And I know a lot of early career nurses don't understand what those terms mean, so I've simplified those for you. Some of the things to think about when you're looking at applying for a research nurse post: is it a fixed term contract or a substantive contract? Because many research posts will have a fixed term, especially if they're joint appointments, because the research project may be funded for a year or 2 years, for example. So it's often worth bearing that in mind when you're looking at roles. And you'll see that on the job description as to whether it's fixed term or substantive, and it's good to check that with the HR. Research nurse posts may adhere to the NHS agenda of change, pay scales and the nursing bans that we currently have. Some of them are funded by universities or charities or private companies, and the university pay scales may be different to the NHS pay scales. So they might be slightly lower, for example, or higher. It depends on what sort of scale they're putting you on. So again, don't presume, always check that when you're applying for roles, because that difference in pay can, make a difference to your finances at the end of the month. Research bursaries, grants and funding opportunities are very competitive. So you need to really plan your applications, and I'll talk a bit about that later. Also, you must have line manager support to be released, to be able to take a funding grant where potentially they will pay your manager a day or 2 days a week for you to do your research. And you might think, this is wonderful, I've been allocated £3,000 or £10,000 on this research bursary or grant. However, as part of your application, you have to have line manager support. And even with the fact that they are going to pay your employer money to release you, your manager may not be able to. If you run a busy clinic or you're in the community with your caseloads, and they might think, and you're a senior nurse potentially or a junior nurse, and they really need you in the numbers, they might find it really hard to find somebody with your skill set. So they may say, no, sorry, we can't release you. Even if they pay for your bill, we can't afford to release you. Usually managers are accommodating, but it's something you need to think about and check if you go for a research bursary or grant. There are early career research opportunities that are ideal to establish whether a career in research is for you. So if you're not quite sure whether to go for a research nurse post, for example, apply for some of these early research opportunities. When you look at clinical academic careers, because you've got research posts, standalone research posts that are advertised, full-time, part-time, that you can apply for. And as I said, you look for the duration of the research. They may be fixed term or more substantive. You've got this clinical academic career pathway that allows a healthcare professional to combine working in clinical practice with undertaking academic study and research. And clinical academic posts will have a research or a leadership focus. So you can link a research study or a leadership course, a master's, PhD or post-doctoral program. And again, usually it's for a fixed period of time. Registered health professionals formally apply for a clinical academic post that will include the level of the training programme and the university course being offered, and they're usually advertised as clinical internships, studentships, fellowships or lectureships. And you need to establish where they will be advertised through your local and national research and development needs, and I'm going to give you lots of tips of where you can look for those in my talk today. Clinical academic careers, a really interesting paper when you look at academic careers, is from Henschel, Kauslowska and Warthall et al. 2021, entitled Interventions and Strategies Aimed at Clinical Academic Pathway Development for Nurses in the UK. And it's a systemised review of literature. And this review aimed to review interventions and strategies designed to progress UK clinical academic career pathways in nursing, and identified the barriers and facilitators to aid these pathways and for wider implementation. And partnership, what we do know is partnerships between NHS and academic institutions, such as clinical academic posts, are known to increase nurse retention and the quality of care. And this review concluded that barriers and facilitators to the development of these pathways include funding, clinical and research time constraints, as I mentioned, being released to be able to do these the academic work, infrastructure and strategic clinical academic leadership and effective partnership working. What I would say is that the tide is really starting to turn, and we're starting to have a lot more funding opportunities to support nursing research now and nurse leadership roles. And they're really starting to come to the fore in nursing. So do look out for those opportunities. Going through what some of these terms mean. So internship offers clinicians with no prior research experience an introduction to different aspects of clinical research for a short duration. So it might be for 6 months or for a year. And you put your application in, and you could be a registered nurse applying. Often they're open to allied health professionals, midwives and nurses. You may assist on a research project. It could include your salary costs. When you undertake the internship, you need to look at what that internship is offering, because different internships will have different parameters. And it will help you develop research skills or to prepare for a doctorate. It may include personal support from an academic team or tailored research training. And some of the internships are very open to what you want to do. So if you had a project you wanted to try and work up or do a pilot study, it may be that they allow you to do that, or you are applying for training for a module, for example. It's very dependent on what the criteria state. Studentships and fellowships, there may be master's studentships offering a foundation in clinical research that enable clinicians to obtain a master's. And usually studentships are annual, so it might be for a year's fees, but some offer 2 or 3 years. Pre-doctoral clinical fellowships, they allow clinicians to undertake master's level academic training and prepare an application for a doctorate. And then you've got preparatory research fellowships you can apply for, and the funding may be used for a pilot study. You could be using it to have time out to write a publication on some work that you've done, research training to aid a future application. And then there's doctoral and postdoctoral fellowships. So similarly, they enable that clinical academic to gain some research experience, and in this case it's to obtain a PhD whilst extending their clinical skills. Clinical lectureships enable postdoctoral clinicians to combine independent research in an academic position with continued professional development. So you can see that they're all going right from early career. You can apply for funding for you to develop and start that academic career in research. There's also bursaries and awards that you can apply for, and there's research training bursaries, funding for short courses and modules to develop research skills, and they can be used towards a master's. And doctoral awards support a doctorate, for example, £3,000 for a year fees of PhD fees. And then you've got post-doctoral awards to support the transition to a post-doctoral position. So you've got these the career pathways and the fellowships, but also there's many external bursaries and awards offered across the UK. So where do you look for opportunities? So the first place I would start is to look on the UK government websites, and I've detailed the 4 national websites. Now these titles sometimes change. This is in June 2022. Currently we've got the National Institute for Health and Care Research in England, Health and Social Care Research and Development for Northern Ireland, the Chief Scientist Office, NHS Research Scotland, and then Health and Care Research Wales. And in England, the National Institute for Health Research that funds health and care research, they provide people, experts, advice, facilities and technology to support researchers. And you can find the funding opportunities for all the fellowships on there, and collaborative opportunities. You can access research methodology advice. You can access facilities for early stage career research, and you have postgraduate research opportunities and funding, as I said, advertised on those websites. I would also contact, if you're not sure, your local research or regional research and development lead, because they should be leads across the UK. And a good way to start is to go on the NHS directory of research offices, and they will have a research directory that you can access the contact details. We also have biomedical research centres, and I work in Oxford, and we've got a fantastic Oxford Biomedical Research Centre. And these centres provide a variety of ways to train to become a researcher while continuing your clinical role. And they will have training hubs that offer financial support, mentoring and training, and they promote research partnerships. And I was successful in applying for funding for 1 year of PhD fees through Oxford Biomedical Research Centres. And the BRC centres receive funding. So in Oxford, they receive the funding from the National Institute for Health and Care Research. And the funding aims to promote research that benefits patients, and these centres promote partnerships and business development that supports funding and training opportunities. The Oxford BRC have a fantastic talk it's on YouTube, and it's entitled Clinical Academic Career Pathways for Nurses, Midwives and Allied Health Professionals. Actually, I think I've got it on the next slide. There you go. And there's a panel of clinical academic researchers. It's shared by Helen Warthall, who's Research and Development Lead in Oxford University Hospital Foundation, NHS Foundation Trust. And she is chairing a panel with clinical academic researchers, and they discuss their experiences in research and the benefit of clinical academic roles and how we can improve support for these career pathways. So it's well worth a listen, and module leads as well to share on Moodle sites. So where else can you look for opportunities? You can join local and national NHS research and development forums. So for example, the RCN has the Research Society, and you can network with national research leaders and experts who support the development of evidence-based practice and policy. So fantastic networking opportunities there. The RCN has a website, and currently it's entitled Research and Innovation. These headings sometimes change across websites, but funding opportunities and are often advertised, and mailing lists and newsletters. So you can obtain funding opportunities by linking to all of these institutions such as the BRC, National Institute of Research, your government websites, and you can see virtual courses that are advertised such as Essentials in NHS Research. Charity websites are great to look at. So just some examples, and these websites can change annually. They will put out adverts for grants, and researchers can be offered up to £10,000 on some of these websites, but the research needs to focus on the criteria for application, and it needs to fit patients in relation to those charities usually. So Parkinson's UK, for example, had funding out for project grants. Bart's charity was offering healthcare delivery improvement grants, doing service improvement projects and pilot studies potentially is a fantastic way to get into research. Diabetes UK, they had a Harry Keane intermediate clinical fellowship offered. When often these charities are offering thousands of pounds of funding. You can also look for research grants through your government website, and I managed to secure a Health Education England grant. They're offered to frontline professionals who would like to attend a short course or conference, and it was because I was allocated some funding I was able to develop my research ideas, and that's what got me into doing my PhD. Florence Nightingale Foundation scholarships and student leadership scholarships also look out for. So how do you become a nurse researcher or research nurse, and how are you going to support that progression? I would say there's 4 key tips here. Firstly, increase your insights of what opportunities are out there. Many nurses do not know that there are all of these opportunities out there, and they will request funding from the local education budget. You have to be proactive and see what's out there. Secondly, promote evidence-based practice in your role and be research active, and I'll give you some tips on that. Complete academic courses aligned to research, and prepare rigorously for your application and interview, whether it's for a research nurse role or a research funding opportunity, as they're very competitive. So firstly, increasing your insights and knowledge. Review job descriptions and personal specifications for requirements relating to professional experience and academic qualifications. Some research nurse posts have no prior academic essential qualifications. They will train you up in the role, whereas others will want you to have certain skills. Book an informal visit and shadowing experience, and do that while you're students. You know, you can ask for spoke placements, and many researchers are accommodating. So you may be in a placement area, but still linked with the local researchers in that area. And you can ask for shadowing experience when you're starting as a newly registered nurse or early career. You may request to shadow a research nurse to see if it's what they do. So, and you need to know what you're applying for. So as I said, some people apply and then don't realise that the post is only for a year or 2, it's fixed term, and then they have to withdraw. So you need to look into all these aspects of the role. Connecting with researchers and clinical academics. Some employers have research cafes. They might have websites and talks that they offer. They're all free online or face-to-face. Go on the forums, as I mentioned, and access newsletters and social media forums. Secondly, promote evidence-based practice and become research active. This is going to strengthen personal statements and applications for fellowships if you're applying for funding, personal statements for interviews and answering questions at interviews for a research nurse. If you are promoting evidence-based practice and you show that your research, you've got an interest in research, you can run a journal club, potentially sharing articles, reviewing, critically appraising with your peers. You could support a research project and take a master's, literature review, research that you might align to your master's or a PhD. You could lead a quality improvement or research project in your local area, or a service improvement project. And I have a YouTube video out with lots of advice on quality improvement and service improvement projects for nurses. And you don't have to lead one. You can find out what's going on and collaborate and see how it works and be part of the team. You can contribute to policy development at local, national level through professional forums and shared governance groups. if you share, disseminate and publish your work, it's going to give you a stronger application because you are becoming research active and you're promoting evidence-based practice. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a peer-reviewed journal. You can share work through local newsletters and through setting up evidence-based practice groups. And I've got a helpful video on my YouTube channel, 5 ways to influence nursing practice, that will strengthen personal statements. Completing academic courses aligned to a role, so attending research conferences and training days, looking at the desirable qualifications on a job application for a research nurse role. It may say working towards, or there may be essential qualifications. So if you know there's a research nurse role and it links to, I don't know, I'm a neuro background, so I know we've got researchers for multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's disease, for example. There are specialist courses on post-registration specialist courses linked to neurosciences and multiple sclerosis aimed at specialist nurses, and it might be that that is an essential qualification on an application. It could be a chemotherapy course if it's an oncology type research. It could be competence with Excel or PC packages or good practice, clinical practice certificate. So look on those job descriptions and then start aligning your research towards those roles. Check if they're offering training as part of the role. Do they expect a master's as well? So something you need to think about. Fourthly, rigorously apply for applications and interviews and write a strong personal statement for the role. So I've given you lots of tips, and I do look at the other videos on service improvement projects, quality improvement projects and influencing practice, and prepare for interviews. And I have lots of helpful videos on how to prepare a personal statement and to prepare for your interview on my YouTube channel, and I'll be putting some more specialist type preparing for interview for research roles on there in the future. So here's the reference that I mentioned earlier from Henschel et al. And do put any comments, any questions in the YouTube comments. You can contact me on Twitter, DM me on my website or Instagram if you prefer. And I have a book out, How to Prepare for Interviews and Develop Your Career, that has a lot more specific tips in there across all different career pathways that you might find helpful too. So good luck whichever career pathway and journey you take.